Coming up this week on Inside Travel Talk, Mark and I dive hidden gem destinations in Mexico, like Holbox and Bacalar. We'll also explore one of America's most historic inns in Stockbridge, Massachusetts, take an unforgettable rail journey aboard Canyon Spirit through the Rockies, and then in segment 2, we'll talk MSC cruises in Galveston, Vikings, quiet seas and Mediterranean sailings, river cruising realities, and some incredible Avalon waterways deals with free airfare to Europe.
The Inside Travel Talk podcast and radio show presented by BluePlanetVacations.com contains travel deals, promotions, and offers that may be time-sensitive. All offers and information were accurate when the show aired. Travel deals and offers change constantly and are capacity-controlled and subject to change without notice.
Explore your world. It's the Inside Travel Talk podcast and radio show, presented by BluePlanetVacations.com. Call or text the show now, 801-649-3700, 801-649-3700, and check out the podcast at InsideTravelTalk.com.
Welcome back to Inside Travel Talk. I'm Justin, and as always, joined by Mark, our travel expert and professional vacation insider. Mark, how are you this week?
Doing great, Justin. It feels like we're officially into travel season now. Airports are busy. People are planning summer vacations. Europe bookings are strong. And honestly, there's a lot happening in the travel world right now.
There really is. And we've got a packed show today, too. We're talking airline safety updates, hidden destinations in Mexico, one of the most historic hotels in New England, an incredible luxury train through the Rockies, and later we'll dive into cruise news, river cruising tips, and some really impressive travel deals. So let's jump right into it. Our first story this week is about American Airlines tightening its rules on power banks following FAA safety warnings. And Mark, this isn't just American Airlines. More airlines seem to be getting serious about lithium battery safety.
Yeah, and honestly, this has been coming for a while. The issue is lithium-ion batteries can overheat and potentially catch fire. Most people don't realize that power banks are basically concentrated batteries sitting in your backpack. And airlines and the FAA are increasingly worried because incidents involving overheating batteries have gone up over the last few years.
I was reading that several international airlines already have stricter rules.
They do. A lot of Asian carriers especially, Singapore Airlines, Cathay Pacific, Korean Air, several of them already require power banks to stay with the passenger and not in overhead bins. Some carriers limit charging on board entirely, and the reason is simple. If a battery starts smoking underneath your seat, a flight attendant can react quickly. If it's inside a packed overhead bin, that becomes much more dangerous.
American Airlines is now asking passengers not to use power banks unattended during flights and making sure they remain accessible.
Which is smart. And honestly, travelers should already be doing that. I always tell people, never pack lithium batteries in checked luggage. Keep them in your carry-on. Don't buy cheap no-name batteries online. And if your battery is swollen, damaged, or overheats regularly, throw it away properly before your trip.
It's amazing how many people travel with 3 or 4 batteries now.
Oh yeah. Between phones, tablets, laptops, earbuds, cameras, everybody travels with batteries. And most travelers don't think about the risk because incidents are still relatively rare. But when they happen on board an aircraft, it gets serious very quickly.
Good advice there. Keep those batteries in your carry-on and buy quality products. Our second story this week comes from Mexico News Daily. 5 places to visit in Mexico if you like adventure, nature, and fewer crowds. And Mark? 2 places really stood out here because you've personally been to both Holbox and Bacalar.
Yeah, and honestly, both are fantastic destinations if you want a different side of Mexico beyond Cancun and Cabo.
Let's start with Holbox.
Holbox is special. It's this small island north of the Yucatan Peninsula, and what makes it unique is the pace. There are very few cars. Most transportation is golf carts or bicycles. The streets are sandy. It feels relaxed immediately when you arrive.
It almost sounds like old Caribbean travel before mass tourism.
That's exactly right. It reminds me of what some beach destinations felt like 30 or 40 years ago. You still have boutique hotels, beach bars, great seafood, but it hasn't become overly commercialized yet.
And the wildlife there is a huge attraction.
Massive attraction. Whale shark season is probably the biggest draw. Swimming with whale sharks there is honestly one of the coolest wildlife experiences I've ever had. These enormous creatures are completely harmless, and seeing them up close is incredible.
And sunsets there apparently are amazing too.
Phenomenal. Holbox has these wide open beaches facing west, and every evening people gather near the shoreline. It's one of those places where everybody slows down and watches the sunset together. You don't get that feeling everywhere anymore.
What about Bacalar?
Bacalar is completely different, but equally impressive. Bacalar is famous for the Lagoon of Seven Colors. And honestly, the water there almost doesn't look real. The shades of blue are unbelievable.
I've seen photos and it looks like the Maldives.
It really does. And the nice thing is it's quieter than Tulum or Cancun. It's more laid back. A lot of kayaking, paddleboarding, small boutique hotels. It feels peaceful.
You mentioned before that it's one of your favorite places in Mexico.
It probably is. There's something calming about Bacalar. You wake up, have breakfast overlooking the lagoon, spend the day on the water, maybe take a boat tour to the cenotes and canals. It's just a very relaxing atmosphere.
The article also mentioned Copper Canyon, La Huasteca Potosina, and the Sierra Gorda.
Yeah, and even though I haven't personally visited those yet, they're incredibly intriguing destinations. Copper Canyon especially, it's actually larger and deeper in some areas than the Grand Canyon, and the train journey through there is supposed to be spectacular.
Mexico really has more diversity than people realize.
Completely. People think beaches first, which are obviously wonderful, but Mexico has mountains, jungles, colonial cities, waterfalls, desert landscapes. It's one of the most geographically diverse countries anywhere.
And increasingly, people want destinations with fewer crowds.
They do, especially after the last several years of over-tourism concerns. Places like Holbox and Bacalar still give you that feeling of discovery.
Our final travel news story this week is one I found both fascinating and slightly disgusting. Apparently, according to a doctor interviewed by Travel and Leisure, you should never put your headphones directly in TSA bins.
Honestly, I completely believe this.
Apparently, those bins are covered in germs.
Think about it. Thousands of people touching them every single day. Shoes, bags, jackets, phones, dirty hands. Those bins probably get cleaned less frequently than people imagine.
And then people put headphones directly in there and immediately place them back in their ears.
Exactly, which is honestly pretty gross when you think about it. And earbuds especially can introduce bacteria directly into the ear canal.
So what should travelers do?
Pretty simple solution. Keep electronics inside your carry-on if allowed, or use a small pouch or zippered case for your headphones and smaller electronics. I personally use a travel organizer for all of that stuff now.
It's funny because airports already feel germy enough.
They do. And honestly, travel involves touching so many high contact surfaces, security bins, tray tables, seatbelt buckles, escalator rails. Basic travel hygiene matters. Hand sanitizer, disinfectant wipes, washing your hands frequently. Those things really help.
All right, Mark, let's move into our hotel spotlight of the week. And this one is really interesting because it ties into early American history as we approach America's 250th birthday celebrations.
Yeah, this is a fantastic property to spotlight.
This week, we're talking about the historic Red Lion Inn in Stockbridge, Massachusetts.
The Red Lion Inn is one of those classic New England hotels that feels like stepping back in time. The property dates all the way back to the late 1700s. Originally, it was a tavern and stagecoach stop before becoming the inn we know today.
Which means it literally predates the Revolutionary War.
It does. And that's what makes it fascinating. Travelers were stopping there before America even officially existed. Like during the Revolutionary period, these inns were gathering places for political discussion, local meetings, news sharing. They were community centers in many ways.
You can almost imagine early American travelers coming through there.
Exactly. And Stockbridge itself is such a classic New England town. Tree-lined streets, colonial architecture, rolling Berkshire hills. Especially during fall foliage season, it's absolutely gorgeous.
And of course, Stockbridge is also home to the Norman Rockwell Museum,
which is fantastic. Norman Rockwell basically captured idealized American life through his paintings. And when you walk around Stockbridge, you actually feel like you're inside one of his paintings.
That's probably the perfect description.
Especially during the holidays. Stockbridge recreates the famous Norman Rockwell Christmas scene every year. Vintage cars, decorations, period clothing. It becomes incredibly nostalgic.
Tell me more about the inn itself.
The Red Lion Inn is full of character, creaking wooden floors, antique furnishings, fireplaces, rocking chairs on the porch. It feels authentic instead of overly polished, and that's part of the charm.
Those are often the best historic hotels.
They are. You feel connected to the place. And the Berkshires region overall is wonderful because you combine history, culture, food, and scenery. Tanglewood is nearby for music lovers. Great hiking, great small towns.
So if somebody's planning a New England trip around the 250th anniversary celebrations over the next few years, this would be a great addition.
And one reason this hotel is especially top of mind for me right now is because I'm actually taking a group there later this summer. We're doing a really fun sports and Americana themed trip that includes 2 baseball games and visits to 3 different halls of fame. The Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, and the Basketball Hall of Fame in Springfield, Massachusetts.
That honestly sounds like an incredible trip.
It really is, and staying at the Red Lion Inn fits the whole experience perfectly because it captures that classic Americana feel. You're combining sports history, New England charm, Revolutionary era history, and small-town America all in one itinerary. Honestly, this is one of those group trips I would love to operate every single year because it's just such a unique and enjoyable experience.
All right, let's move into our main travel topic this week. Evelyn called in and wanted to know about good train tours in the Western United States. As a reminder, if you want, call or text the show to ask a travel question, please call or text 801-649-3700. And Mark, your recommendation was Canyon Spirit between Salt Lake City and Denver.
Yeah, and honestly, this is one of the best sightseeing rail experiences in North America right now. I did this trip about 18 months ago and absolutely loved it.
What makes it different from regular train travel?
This is very much a luxury sightseeing experience rather than transportation. You travel during daylight hours specifically to maximize scenery and then overnight in hotels rather than sleeping on board.
Which honestly probably appeals to a lot of people.
It does. Some travelers like sleeper trains, but many people prefer sleeping in an actual hotel bed. Canyon Spirit gives you the scenic rail experience without sacrificing comfort.
Talk about the route itself.
The scenery is incredible. You're traveling through red rock canyons, mountain passes, river valleys. Between Salt Lake City and Denver, you get this amazing transition from Utah desert landscapes into the Colorado Rockies.
And you said the onboard commentary was one of your favorite parts.
It really was. The hosts on board provide constant storytelling and interpretation, history, geology, wildlife, railroad history, local legends. It turns the journey into an educational experience instead of just looking out the window.
That probably helps people appreciate what they're seeing.
Tremendously. Otherwise, some people just see mountains and rocks. But when someone explains how these canyons formed millions of years ago or talks about early railroad construction through the Rockies, it adds context.
And the onboard service is supposed to be very good too.
Excellent. Great food, attentive staff, comfortable seating, glass dome viewing areas. It feels premium without feeling stuffy.
Who would enjoy this trip most?
Honestly, a wide range of travelers. Retirees love it. Couples love it. Photography enthusiasts love it. Even families with older children enjoy it because there's constant scenery and storytelling.
And it's a very different way to see the American West.
Completely different. Roads only show you certain angles. Rail lines often follow rivers and canyons, inaccessible by highway. You see landscapes most travelers never experience.
Was there a particular section that stood out to you?
Absolutely. The ride along the Colorado River was spectacular, especially through Glenwood Canyon. You've got towering canyon walls, the river running right alongside the train, rapids, dramatic cliffs. In these moments where everyone in the rail car just gets quiet because the scenery is that impressive. And there's a great rail history connection there too. Glenwood Canyon is where Cyrus Osborne of General Motors got the inspiration for the modern Vistadome rail car in 1944 after realizing passengers needed a better panoramic view of scenery like that. The first Vistadome car, the Silver Dome, was tested in 1945, and the California Zephyr later became famous for using those dome cars through Glenwood Canyon.
So it's not just beautiful scenery, it's part of the history of sightseeing rail travel in America.
That canyon helped shape how people experience scenic train travel. And honestly, train travel forces you to slow down in a good way. You're not driving. You're not rushing through airports. You sit back, listen to the hosts, watch the landscape unfold, and experience the journey itself.
Which feels increasingly rare in modern travel.
It really does.
Well, this transitions perfectly into our travel deal of the week because Canyon Spirit currently has some impressive promotions for 2026.
They really do. And these offers are actually combinable, which makes them especially attractive.
The first is the 2026 summer offer, where travelers can enjoy 3 days on board for the price of 2 on eligible July and August departures.
Which is an outstanding value. That's roughly an $800 savings per couple. And importantly, you're getting additional time experiencing the scenery and onboard atmosphere.
And then there's the final call offer.
Right. Through June 4th, travelers can save up to $700 per couple with Premier upgrades or up to $500 with the signature experience on select 2026 departures.
And these can be combined.
Yes, which creates significant overall savings for travelers considering this experience.
It sounds like if somebody has been considering luxury rail travel, this could be the perfect time.
Absolutely, especially because interest in experiential travel continues growing. People increasingly want memorable journeys rather than simply checking destinations off a list.
And this definitely sounds memorable.
It absolutely is.
All right, that wraps up segment 1 of this week's Inside Travel Talk. We talked airline battery safety, hidden gems in Mexico, TSA germs, historic New England hotels, and scenic rail journeys through the American West. Coming up in segment 2, we dive into cruise news, including MSC's booming popularity in Galveston, Viking's quiet seas and Mediterranean cruises, river cruising realities, and some excellent Avalon Waterways deals with free airfare. We will be right back after this short break.
You're listening to the Inside Travel Talk podcast and radio show with Patrick Wiscombe and Mark Faldmo, presented by BluePlanetVacations.com, America's best travel advisors. Call or text the show now, 801-649-3700. That's 801-649-3700. And check out the podcast at InsideTravelTalk.com. We'll be right back.
Inside Travel Talk is brought to you by AMA Waterways. From castles to capitals, discover Europe the way it was meant to be seen. By River, experience iconic destinations, immersive culture, and unforgettable moments, all in comfort and style. Whether you love history, food, or scenic beauty, there's a journey waiting for you. To set out on your own river cruise journey, contact Blue Planet Vacations at 888-718-7717 or BluePlanetVacations.com.
Now, back to the Inside Travel Talk podcast and radio show, presented by BluePlanetVacations.com. America's best travel advisors. Call or text the show right now. 801-649-3700. 801-649-3700. And check out the podcast at InsideTravelTalk.com.
Welcome back to segment 2 of Inside Travel Talk. This hour we're talking cruises, river cruising, cruise airfare, and some very good European river cruise deals. Mark, ready to jump in?
Let's go.
Our first cruise news story this week is MSC Cruises, seeing very strong demand out of Galveston, Texas. And Mark, you have talked about MSC quite a bit over the years.
MSC has grown tremendously in North America. Europeans have known MSC for years because it's huge overseas, but American travelers are increasingly discovering the brand.
What do you personally like about MSC?
Several things. First, the ships themselves are beautiful, a very modern design, lots of open spaces, elegant European styling. Second, MSC often delivers excellent value for the price.
Meaning travelers can sometimes get a nicer experience at a lower cruise rate?
Especially if you compare cabin categories and onboard amenities. MSC frequently prices aggressively to attract North American travelers.
And Galveston itself has become such an important cruise port.
It really has. What makes Galveston appealing is accessibility, huge driving market from Texas and surrounding states. People can avoid airfare entirely by driving to the port,
which saves a family a lot of money.
And Galveston has invested heavily in cruise infrastructure, new terminals, expanded facilities. Cruise lines see enormous potential there, and itineraries from Galveston usually include Great Western Caribbean destinations, Cozumel, Costa Maya, Roatan, very popular ports.
Okay, our next cruise story involves Viking and their quiet season Mediterranean sail. Mark, explain what quiet season means.
Quiet season generally refers to shoulder or off-peak travel periods. In the Mediterranean, that usually means late fall, winter, or early spring, outside the busiest summer months.
And there are advantages to that.
Huge advantages: fewer crowds, lower prices, cooler temperatures, easier sightseeing. Honestly, some Mediterranean destinations are more enjoyable outside peak summer heat.
Especially places like Rome or Athens.
Exactly. Walking around Rome in July can be brutally hot and crowded. In November or March, temperatures are comfortable and sites are less packed.
And Viking is currently offering up to 30% savings on these voyages.
Correct, and the offer expires May 31st. Viking Ocean cruises are excellent for travelers who prefer a calmer, more destination-focused cruise experience.
How are they different from mainstream cruise lines?
Viking focuses heavily on enrichment and destination immersion, smaller ships, no casinos, no water slides, no children on board. It's a more relaxed atmosphere.
More culturally focused?
Lectures, regional cuisine, included excursions. It appeals strongly to travelers who enjoy history and learning.
And Mark, before we move on, there's one Viking itinerary I wanted to ask you about, because this one really caught my attention. It's called Amalfi Coast, Africa, and Iberia. And honestly, it looks pretty unique compared to the standard Mediterranean cruises.
It really is unique, and that's one reason I like it so much. A lot of Mediterranean cruises tend to repeat the same ports over and over: Rome, Florence, Santorini, Mykonos, which are all wonderful, but this itinerary mixes in some destinations that many travelers haven't experienced before.
Walk us through some of the stops, because this route really stands out.
The cruise starts in Rome and then heads down to Salerno, which is your gateway to the Amalfi Coast. That alone is a huge highlight because the Amalfi Coast is one of the most beautiful stretches of coastline anywhere in Europe. Then you've got Palermo in Sicily, which has incredible food and this fascinating blend of Italian, Arab, and Norman influence.
And then it gets really interesting with Tunisia.
Exactly. The stop in La Goulette gives travelers access to Tunis and ancient Carthage. And honestly, that's not something you see on many cruise itineraries. You're getting a little North African culture mixed into a Mediterranean voyage, which creates a completely different feel.
That's what makes this itinerary feel more adventurous.
It does. Then you continue to Sardinia, which is absolutely beautiful and feels very different from mainland Italy. After a relaxing sea day, you finish with Valencia and Barcelona in Spain. So in 1 week, you experience Italy, Sicily, North Africa, Sardinia, and Spain. That's a really diverse itinerary.
And honestly, this sounds like a perfect example of why quiet season cruising can be so appealing.
Completely. Imagine visiting places like the Amalfi Coast or Valencia without the peak summer crowds and extreme heat. You can actually enjoy walking around and exploring instead of just looking for shade and air conditioning every 10 minutes.
Plus, Viking really fits this type of itinerary.
They do. Viking attracts travelers who are curious and destination-focused, people who want culture, history, food, and immersive experiences. This isn't a loud party cruise. It's much more about discovery and experiencing the places you're visiting.
All right, let's get to our listener question this week. James texted the show asking whether it's worth using cruise line airfare programs.
Great question, because there are definite pros and cons.
Let's start with the positives.
The biggest advantage is usually price. Cruise lines negotiate bulk airfare contracts and can often offer very competitive rates. Norwegian Cruise Line's 2-for-1 airfare promotion is a good example.
Which can save travelers quite a bit.
Sometimes thousands, depending on the itinerary and season.
But there are trade-offs.
Definitely. The biggest downside is lack of control. You usually don't choose the airline schedule, routing, or sometimes even the exact airports.
So you could end up with multiple connections.
Exactly. Or early departures, long layovers, airlines you normally avoid. And frequently, cruise lines don't finalize flight assignments until closer to departure.
Which makes planning harder.
It can, especially for experienced travelers who are particular about flights. Personally, I tell people it depends on priorities. If saving money matters most, cruise airfare can be excellent. If convenience and control matter most, don't use the cruise line's airfare.
What about cruise line protection if flights are delayed?
That's actually another advantage of cruise line air. If the cruise line books your flights and delays occur, they're generally more responsible for helping get you to the ship.
Which provides peace of mind.
Especially for international departures.
All right, let's move into our main cruise topic this week, river cruising and the realities of double and triple docking. Mark, this is something first-time river cruisers often don't realize.
Yeah, and honestly, it surprises a lot of first-time river cruisers. Double docking simply means another river ship pulls up alongside your ship at the dock. Triple docking means there could actually be two ships between your ship and the riverbank.
Meaning you could literally have another ship right outside your cabin window.
Exactly. Sometimes even two ships. So if your curtains are open, somebody from the neighboring ship may have a direct view into your room. That's why my advice is always close your drapes before bed. Otherwise, you may wake up eye level with another passenger drinking coffee 5 feet away.
But this is normal in river cruising.
Completely normal. And honestly, most experienced river cruisers barely think about it after the first day.
Because the advantages outweigh the inconvenience.
By far. River cruising is one of the best ways to experience Europe. You unpack once and visit multiple cities and regions seamlessly.
And the scenery constantly changes.
Constantly. Vineyards, castles, medieval towns, countryside. Plus, river ships dock directly in city centers far more often than ocean ships.
So you walk off directly into town.
Exactly. You're not taking long shuttle rides from industrial ports. On a Danube cruise, for example, you can step off right into Budapest or Vienna.
That convenience sounds wonderful.
It really is. And river cruising also tends to feel more intimate, smaller ships, fewer passengers, more personalized service.
More social too?
Definitely. People get to know each other quickly on board. Meals become social experience. Excursions feel more relaxed.
What kind of traveler enjoys river cruising most?
Travelers who enjoy culture, scenery, history, food, wine, and a slower pace. River cruising is less about nonstop entertainment and more about immersive travel.
And Europe is still the biggest market.
Absolutely. The Rhine, Danube, Seine, Douro, those are classic itineraries for good reason.
Which brings us perfectly into our cruise deal of the week, because Avalon Waterways currently has a very strong promotion. Travelers can get free airfare or save up to $1,500 per person on select 2027 Europe River cruises.
Honestly, free airfare on European river cruises is a tremendous value because airfare to Europe has stayed relatively expensive.
And Avalon is a very respected river cruise line.
Very much so. One thing I particularly like about Avalon is their panorama suites. Their cabin design opens the room toward the view with large windows. It feels much more spacious than traditional river cruise cabins.
Let's talk about some of your favorite itineraries included in this promotion.
First is Magnificent Europe. That's one of the classic long river cruise itineraries connecting Amsterdam to Budapest. You're visiting incredible ports: Amsterdam, Cologne, the Rhine Gorge, Strasbourg, Vienna, Bratislava, Budapest. It combines multiple rivers and several countries.
That sounds like an excellent introduction to Europe river cruising.
It absolutely is. Experience Dutch canals, German castles, Austrian culture, Hungarian history, tremendous variety.
And Mark, on that Magnificent Europe itinerary, you're visiting so many iconic cities that it's probably hard to choose favorites. But if somebody asked you for your personal favorite ports on that cruise, which ones stand out most?
That's tough because it's such a strong itinerary overall. But honestly, 3 that really stand out for me are Cologne, Bratislava, and Budapest, because they each feel completely different from one another.
Let's start with Cologne.
Cologne is fantastic because it gives you that classic Rhine River, Germany experience. The cathedral there, the Cologne Cathedral, is one of the most impressive churches anywhere in Europe. You can see those twin spires from the river as your ship approaches the city, and it's really dramatic. Then once you're walking around, you've got historic squares, great German food, and this really lively atmosphere. It feels authentic and energetic at the same time.
And that's one of the advantages of river cruising. You dock right in the middle of the city.
Exactly. You walk off the ship and you're immediately immersed in the destination. No long bus rides from a cruise terminal 20 miles away.
What about Bratislava? That feels like a city a lot of Americans don't know much about.
Which is exactly why I love it. Bratislava is one of Europe's most underrated capitals. It's smaller and more relaxed than Vienna or Budapest, but it has so much charm. The old town is compact and very walkable, with cobblestone streets, outdoor cafes, castles overlooking the Danube, and a really fun atmosphere. It almost feels like discovering a hidden gem in Central Europe.
And it still feels less touristy than some other European capitals.
Definitely. You can still find places there where it feels more local and authentic. Plus, Slovakia overall is a country many travelers never expected to visit, and river cruising introduces them to it in a very approachable way.
And then there's Budapest, which honestly feels like one of the crown jewels of river cruising.
It absolutely is. Budapest at night from a river ship is one of the great travel experiences in Europe. When the Parliament building lights up along the Danube, it's breathtaking. And what makes Budapest unique is that it really feels like 2 cities combined into one. Buda on one side of the river with the hills and castles, and Pest on the other side with the grand boulevards and historic buildings.
And the thermal baths there are famous too.
They are. Budapest has this incredible cafe culture, thermal spas, history, beautiful architecture, great food. It just checks every box. Honestly, if somebody finishes their river cruise in Budapest, I always recommend staying an extra couple nights because there's so much to experience there.
What about the next itinerary, Danube Dreams?
Another fantastic itinerary. The Danube is probably the most iconic river cruising route in Europe. Budapest and Vienna alone are worth the trip.
And those cities are incredibly beautiful.
Especially from the water. Seeing Budapest illuminated at night from a river ship is unforgettable.
And the next itinerary is the romantic Rhine.
The Rhine is classic storybook Europe. Castles on hilltops, vineyards, medieval towns, ports like Cologne, Rudesheim, Strasbourg, Basel. It's incredibly scenic.
If somebody has never done a river cruise before, which itinerary would you recommend first?
Honestly, probably either Romantic Rhine or Danube Dreams. Both are approachable, scenic, culturally rich, and consistently popular for first-time river cruisers.
And with free airfare included, these become much more attainable financially.
Exactly. Airfare can be one of the biggest barriers to European travel. Removing that cost changes the equation significantly.
Plus, Avalon has a very loyal following.
They really do. And one of the biggest reasons is the cabin design. Honestly, Avalon probably has my favorite standard river cruise cabins in the industry because of the way they position the beds facing the scenery.
Which sounds simple, but that actually makes a huge difference.
It really does. On a lot of river cruise ships, the bed placement doesn't fully take advantage of the views. With Avalon's panorama suites, the entire wall basically opens up into these huge panoramic windows, and your bed faces outward toward the river. So instead of sitting in a chair trying to enjoy the scenery, you can literally relax in bed and watch castles, vineyards, and villages glide by.
That honestly sounds pretty amazing.
It is, especially early in the morning when you wake up sailing through the Rhine Gorge or cruising along the Danube. You open the curtains and the scenery is right there in front of you. It creates a much more immersive feeling compared to a traditional cabin setup.
And river cruising is all about scenery.
Exactly. You spend a lot of time enjoying the landscape between ports, so cabin design matters more than people realize. Avalon understood that and built their ships around maximizing the view experience.
It almost turns the cabin itself into part of the sightseeing experience.
That's a perfect way to describe it. Once travelers experience that setup, it's one reason many of them become repeat Avalon guests.
Well, Mark, we covered a lot today.
We definitely did.
Airline battery safety, hidden destinations in Mexico, the Red Lion Inn in Stockbridge, Canyon Spirit Rail journeys, MSC growth in Galveston, Viking quiet season cruises, river cruising realities, and Avalon Waterways deals.
Lots of great travel ideas this week.
And some excellent deals, too. The Canyon Spirit offers combining summer promotions, and final call savings are impressive, with up to $800 in savings. And the Avalon free airfare promotion could save travelers thousands on Europe river cruises. Well, that wraps up this week's Inside Travel Talk. Thanks so much for listening. If you have travel questions, cruise questions, or topics you'd like us to cover, send them our way. Call or text 801-649-3700.
And remember, sometimes the best journeys are the ones you haven't considered yet.
I like that. And I'll leave everybody with this travel quote. Travel makes one modest. You see what a tiny place you occupy in the world. Thanks for joining us on Inside Travel Talk. We'll see you next time on the Inside Travel Talk podcast.
That's it. That's the end of the show. You've been listening to the Inside Travel Talk podcast and radio show, presented by BluePlanetVacations.com. Book your adventure right now. Call 888-718-7717. That's 888-718-7717. Thanks for listening. Have a great week.
Inside Travel Talk is brought to you by El Dorado Spa Resorts. Escape to Cancun's Riviera Maya with El Dorado's more inclusive experience, featuring gourmet dining, premium drinks, beachfront luxury, and unforgettable extras like snorkeling, beach clubs, and curated excursions. To start planning your all-inclusive escape to El Dorado Spa Resorts, contact Blue Planet Vacations at 888-718-7717 or blueplanetvacations.com.